After an airing for a month, the Moon Knight series has finally come to an end. The film has achieved unimaginable success. I personally rate this movie as the best long-form series they've followed up to now. The cinematic technique of Oscar Isaac as an executive producer has made the audience crane their necks waiting for each episode to air. It won't be long anymore. Before entering the channel, do not forget to press the notification button to watch the latest videos from my channel. Now, without further ado, let us start. The main character is a man named Steven. Every day when he goes to bed, he has to sprinkle a lot of sand around the bed. All the doors, including the window, even the gaps, must be taped shut. Finally, he locks himself in bed and listens to the Good Night program to go to sleep. During the day, he is a salesperson at the museum, with his gentle, polite personality so faintly felt that no one can remember his name. When lonely, Steven often went to the park to talk to the statue, pretending to be there, every time talking until dark, even though it did not respond. But that day, suddenly, Steven met a stroke of luck. A female colleague asked him out to eat tomorrow. Steven is extremely pleasant. That evening, he did not go to talk to the statue at the park anymore, but went home early to sleep. But that night after sleeping, Steven dreamed he was in a field. It seemed that he was beaten by others in a Western brawl. Steven stood up hard, but suddenly heard someone talk to him. "Help us, Steven." But looking back and forth, there were no people. Steven discovered that there was something in the bag. He opened it. It was a golden scarab. When he still didn't understand what this is, Steven turned around. But behind was nothing. Above him was a person staring at him. The man waved at him. Steven also waved. But the next moment, the man took out his gun to shoot him. "Move, don't stop, run fast." Steven absolutely knew nothing where he was, nor did he know who the opponent was. He ran onto a path to the nearby town, taking advantage of crowded places to hide himself. Steven saw a bunch of people surrounding an old man. That old man seems to be telling fortunes for everyone. Steven joined the crowd. The fortune teller displays the scales of justice before someone, which means that the person has or will cause crimes, and as a result, they will die. At this time, someone accused him of a failure. The old man shouted angrily like a bird. After that, everyone knelt down. Steven was immediately discovered. Steven said he didn't know anything. He wanted to go home. The old man told Steven to remove the scarab. Steven took the scarab from his pocket. As soon as he tried to give it to him, his hand lost control. Steven pulled a finger away. As a result, the scarab flew away. The old man pondered. He's chosen. He did not say much more, immediately told his subordinates to arrest Steven. But when someone grabbed the scarab from Steven, Steven thought, "What is this?" Steven could not think much. The old man approached again. Steven stole a car to leave. It seems that the scarab is very important to the old man. He had a whole convoy chasing Steven. From behind, another man jumped onto his car. While struggling with him, the man threatened, "If you lose the scarab, I will take your life." Steven falls into the abyss. Steven's car is sandwiched in the middle. But now, calmer than before, Steven discovered he was driving backwards. Next, a tree fell and Steven woke up. This dream is too real, too vivid. But looking closely, why was it 7 p.m.? Today he had to go on a date with a colleague. Steven got dressed and headed a little late to the rendezvous. He waited until 12 o'clock, but his colleague hadn't come. Steven called to ask her what was wrong. He was yelled at. His colleague said that she waited for him on Friday night and did not see his shadow. Today, Steven is confused. Isn't it Sunday? He quickly asked the waiter, "What day is today?" "Sunday." When Steven got home, he saw a goldfish. He didn't understand its purpose. Suddenly, he discovered that there was some strange dirt on the floor. Looking up, the floorboard seemed to be loose. Steven opened the floorboard. As expected, he discovered inside a key and a phone. Steven opened the phone. He discovered a missed call. Trying to understand what this was, Steven called back. The opponent is a female, angrily asking where he was. But now, suddenly someone called his name. Steven followed the voice to the toilet, but there was nothing inside. Suddenly, the room shook like an earthquake. The atmosphere became tense to the extreme. A terrifying creature emerged from hiding and began to chase him. But fortunately, the one who entered after him was an old woman. She was so scared by Steven, she left the elevator first. While Steven understood nothing, he found himself in a car. In short, none of it was a dream. Steven saw a monster, then saw the person chasing him yesterday. Steven realized that everything is true. Steven quickly ran into the museum, but the man still chased him. Steven meant to ask for protection, but did not expect them to protect the man. The old man captured Steven and brought him to the scales. but did not expect the scales of justice to sway relentlessly. Why are you so conflicted? This was the first case the scales had encountered where the man was conflicted, so it released Stephen. But in the evening, when the moonlight rises, monsters quietly came. Stephen had gotten home from work when a big shadow blocked his way. Stephen was about to clench his fist, but the monster was stronger than he imagined. Stephen runs like crazy. He ran onto a path into the toilet. This time, he was considered safe. Marc couldn't help it anymore. He spoke up, asking Stephen to hand over the control of his body. The monster was about to break the door. At this moment, Stephen was completely bewildered. "Let me save you." At that moment, Stephen's body completely transformed. He turned into a knight. His whole body was all white. After dispatching the monster, he turned around to leave coolly. Stephen woke up. He once again woke up after his episode. The chain on his foot was still tying him down. The incident wasn't over for him yet. He tried to talk to Marc in the mirror, but did not receive Marc's response. Early in the morning, he went to the museum to work as usual, but the museum staff blocked him. After asking, he learned the toilet in the museum was seriously destroyed. Stephen worriedly asked to see the camera. From the camera, yesterday, it can be seen that in the museum there was only Stephen, not the monster or his transformation. At that moment, Stephen wanted to know how he ran away, but it seemed it was Marc. Stephen was sanctioned for the destruction of the toilets. All thought his head has a problem. Hope you can go somewhere to get treatment. Stephen was then handed a pink slip and let go by the museum. Stephen knew clearly he couldn't do anything. After leaving the museum, he followed the phone's location to a storage unit. After a while, searching in warehouse number 43, when he opened the warehouse door, he found a passport. Inside the passport was the name of Marc Spector, another identity. Besides the wad of money in the pocket, he also saw a golden beetle. The beetle then spread its two wings and flew up to become a constellation, but what its purpose was is not clear. Marc finally appeared in the mirror. The two of them started a serious conversation. Marc hoped Stephen wouldn't continue searching. "Now let's go to sleep. Everything will return to normal." But Stephen was tired of this kind of life. He wanted to know what fate Marc had. Marc told everything to Stephen. He is the incarnation of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. He helps the weak and punishes bad guys. After listening to this sentence, Stephen almost fainted from fear. He took Marc's bag to go to the police. But at this moment, the lights in the warehouse began to flash continuously. And in that flashing, a giant shadow went straight to him. No mistake, that is the moon god. Surrender the body here or be blinded. Stephen was extremely scared. He ran straight out of the warehouse. In his panic, he bumped into his girlfriend Lila. But this is Marc's girlfriend. Lila used the phone to locate Marc's location. Stephen decided to pretend to be Marc to get more information about Marc from Lila. Looking at Lila's anger, it was clear her relationship with Marc was not simple. It turned out that she was Marc's wife. Lila constantly scolded Marc on the road to his house. After entering the house, Marc appeared in the aquarium glass, but Lila did not see him. Marc urged Stephen to avoid Lila. He did not want her involved. But it's too late now. Lila saw the golden scarab Marc found. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Two police officers barged in and immediately talked to Stephen. Then they made an excuse to arrest him. Lila escaped through the roof of the house and got away. Stephen was brought to the old man's base after that. His name is Arthur. It turned out that the arms of the two police officers had a special symbol. They were the subordinates of Arthur. In Arthur's base, the moon god always stood beside Stephen. "Kill him, Stephen. Break Arthur's neck." Marc demanded Stephen give him back control. But Stephen did not do so. Instead, he tried to defuse the situation. Arthur was intrigued by this. After that, Arthur showed his true face. He wanted Stephen to hand over the scarab to end everything. He knew the existence of Marc and Khonshu. He said that crimes need to be nipped in the bud. Do not let the influence of Khonshu and Marc control you. But this way of thinking is completely opposite to Stephen. Arthur immediately threatened Stephen to make him hand over the scarab. At this moment, Lila appeared with the scarab before everyone. Khonshu seemed unstable, so Marc forcibly took control of Stephen's body. But they didn't understand what Khonshu meant. The two of them only knew to fight each other. Arthur picked up his staff to activate superpowers. A hand-shaped monster rose from the ground and rushed at Stephen. He fell from a height. He wasn't injured because he was wearing the knight's armor. Marc laughed at Stephen in the mirror, calling him an old coward. The monster above continued its chase. It engaged Stephen in combat, but only Stephen could see that monster. The people on the road saw Stephen and thought he was drunk and causing a disturbance. Then the monster threw him on a bus. Those who watched this movie probably know this is the place where Stephen officially transformed. Because he needed to quickly solve the trouble, Stephen surrendered the body to Marc. Stephen out. The Moonlight Knight began to fight. He summoned 2 crescent blades and chased the monster. He leapt upstairs and performed a spectacular takedown. Under the moonlight, looking at the Moon Knight is the peak of coolness. Marc chose the right time to jump and then finished off the approaching monster. When falling from the rooftop, he slammed the monster straight into a statue. Monster then disappeared, but unfortunately the scarab was lost during the fight and found by Arthur. Khonshu is very angry because Marc let Stephen control the body, causing this. To prevent Arthur from finding Amit's grave, they were forced to go to Cairo to continue fighting. On the other hand, Lila and her mother are chatting with each other. Here, the audience learned that her father was an archaeologist. Her mother disapproved of her father's work, which involved fake documents supporting Lila's father to travel to other countries to find antiques. In another scene, Marc is looking for someone with information about Amit's tomb. But when he arrived, the man had been killed by Arthur's subordinates. Marc interrogated other men to get more information. The men didn't cooperate, so Marc prepared to kill one as an example. But when the knife reached the neck of one, Stephen appeared again. "Don't do that, Marc!" A second later, Marc found himself on a taxi to the airport. What to do, Stephen? Marc continued to chase after the 2 men earlier. When he cornered one, Stephen appeared again, distracting Marc. As a result, he was attacked from behind. But a second later, Marc hadn't done it, Stephen hadn't done it, so who did it? It must be the third one, Jake. Marc grabbed the survivor and took him to the tomb of his father. But the man worshipped Amit and took a knife to slash his own throat. When they had no more leads, Khonshu had to use his strength to call the gods to open the Hall of Judgment. At this time, Khonshu appeared in the middle of the table of gods. On the other side, Arthur followed the scarab to the place where Amit was buried. While digging the tomb, he saw Khonshu. Khonshu was desperate enough to break the laws of the gods. A gate was opened to invite Marc and Khonshu in. They were summoned into a chamber inside a pyramid, also where the gods gather and judge. Here, there are many statues of different gods. As humans gradually abandon their faith in the gods have long abandoned people. They let humans decide everything themselves. The statues here are only observing. Unlike other gods, Khonshu always wants to stay to help mankind, so he has been hated by other gods. The gods summon Arthur to judgment, but he was very cunning. Twisting the past of both Marc and Khonshu made the 2 unable to say anything more. Here we also know that Arthur used to be an avatar for Khonshu. Finally, the gods said Arthur was innocent. He quietly left. However, Arthur's goddess understood what was about to happen. She gave him a clue about the coffin of Senfu, a person who recorded the position of the tomb. The coffin had appeared in the black market, including the map to Amit's tomb, which the gods didn't know. Stepping outside, Marc met his wife Lila again, who had managed to track him down. Good thing for Marc, Lila has information about the owner of this tomb. She took him on a boat to go there. Here, they met a super-rich Egyptian. He allowed Marc and Lila to see the tomb. But both of them understood nothing about the antiques, except Stephen. Before they could finish deciphering, Arthur appeared again. He said deceptive words to convince the people here. Arthur used power from his staff, chanting a mantra that caused the coffin to explode. Mr. Knight, standing in the moonlight amidst the chaos, was struck from behind and landed hard, defeated. Arthur's bodyguards took their guns and opened fire. Marc turned his body to protect Lila. Lila urged Marc to help her go in to get the map before it was destroyed in the tomb. Marc threw dozens of crescent darts to take down the bodyguards. He rushed in, stabbing and dodging, defeating 4 or 5 men single-handedly. While trying to kill one, Stephen appeared again. "Come on, bro, let's be calm and reconcile." So Stephen took over and the young man was spared. Marc had to come out again, but this time it was too late. Many soldiers rushed at Stephen, pinning him from head to toe, making him unable to move. Seeing that, Lila picked up a gun to help Marc. She shot one dead, but then the floor collapsed. A guard pulled out a spear and prepared to finish off Lila. Seeing that his wife was about to be skewered, Marc took control and killed 3 men. Then Marc rushed to save Lila. He also threw a dart at the guard, pinning him to the wall. Afterward, they went to a desert area together. Lila and Marc tried to decipher the torn map, but neither of them could do it. Lila convinced Marc to give the body to Stephen. He was the last hope.
Reluctantly, Marc had to go to a corner, look in a mirror, and call Stephen out. Very quickly, after a while of fitting the pieces, Stephen deciphered the entire map. The map is a star-shaped map, and it shows a constellation. But the stars changed and drifted over time. It was drawn 2,000 years ago, so how could its position be found? From within, Khonshu said, "I remember that night. I remember every night." It seems that on that night, he had to go through something terrible. To recreate the sky, Marc will need Stephen's help. And Khonshu also advised, "When I am imprisoned by the gods, Marc must come to free me." Stephen donned the armor, following what Khonshu instructed. Stephen raised his hand to the sky. The night sky rewound 2,000 years. "I've never seen any magic scene like this. It is formidable power." The sky of Egypt appeared a very strange scene. The stars moved rapidly in the sky. Finally, that night stopped. Lila hurriedly searched the sky for the constellation. On the god's side, they decided to imprison Khonshu
in a statue as punishment. They held hands and chanted, turning Khonshu into stone. Finally, Lila found the location, and Khonshu's power also slowly disappeared. Stephen was exhausted and fainted. Lila laid him down. Lila was about to pull him to the car when a car came from behind. Without warning, they fired bullets continuously at the two people. Thanks to plot armor, both are still intact. Lila pulled Stephen up a hillside. The car launched a search. Lila saw them unloading crates of ammunition. They turned the car straight at Stephen, but Lila quickly ran to their truck, taking flares to attract their attention. They turned the car to shoot at her, but missed. Lila then used a flare to throw into an ammunition crate. The explosion sent the henchmen to meet their demise. At this time, Stephen had woken up. It was sunrise. The two quickly got in the car and drove to the coordinates of the tomb. Stephen insisted that he and Marc had an agreement. When Khonshu left, Marc would also leave and officially end everything. That's what Marc always hid from Lila, because he didn't want her to be sad. But she was sadder when Marc hid things from her. Stephen decided that Marc would only take over when needed. The two parked the car at the stone entrance, walked a while, and found Arthur's camp. They were here. The two decided to talk before going on. Marc kept begging Stephen for a chance. "My friend is scared. No Khonshu, no superpowers. Brothers and sisters are easy prey. But don't worry, because you have me." Stephen said Marc always had an advantage, because he had Lila. "So it turns out he loves my wife." Stephen stared hard at Marc. He countered that Marc was in love with Lila too, making Marc mad and threatening to throw away the guns. The gun barrel had bloodstains and a knife mark on the stock, signaling the difficult journey of the two. Who knows if Stephen is so excited because he will explore the mysterious tomb or because he has his friend's wife beside him. Lila helped Stephen tie the rope, leaning in close for what seemed like a long time. But this time Stephen acted fast. He locked Lila's lips right then and there. Was that scene? That was way more than just sitting close. Lila was a bit embarrassed by Stephen's boldness. She shyly jumped down first. Before they could have a passionate moment, Stephen was punched by Marc for kissing his wife. Anyone who covets his friend's wife will lose all his friends someday. Stephen, after being scolded by Marc, fell into the pit. Stephen's excitement made Lila smile. It's true that when in love, even the edge thinks of a hero. Lila this time must be called wrong, like a wrong number. Lila's father sacrificed himself for his own beliefs about the ancient Egyptian world, and he would definitely be happy to see what Lila is doing. Stephen discovered the tunnel architecture built in the form of the Eye of Horus. This is a symbol of royalty or protection in the afterlife. It represents the 6 human senses. After analyzing the symbols, the two discovered that maybe the statue of Amit was inside the coffin of her last avatar, and Amit's last avatar is Alexander the Great. The two continued to a room. Paintings on the walls describe the gods who used to protect Alexander. In the middle, there is a sacrificial table with fresh blood. Below were ancient vases that seemed to hold offerings for the gods. Lila saw a path full of blood, but Stephen was a bit distracted and found a different path. Of course the girl was chosen, so he didn't know how to refuse. This is all so bizarre. He was curious when suddenly there was the sound of gunfire. It seems that Arthur's people are shooting at something, but that something is dangerous. The two of them quickly hid. A black creature looking like a mummified guardian of the tomb grabbed one of Arthur's henchmen. Stephen was suddenly discovered by it. It jumped down like a spider towards him.
Lila threw a jar into the wall to distract it and then created a smokescreen to run. Meanwhile, Stephen knocked over items on the other side. He thought he had subdued it, but it was not so easy. Lila ran to a cliff edge with only a narrow ledge. She looked down and realized the chasm was as deep as falling for days. She had no way back. As she jumped across the chasm, the rocks began to crumble. Fortunately, she just stepped to the other side before it collapsed. The only consolation for her now is that she was not alone. The mummified guardian had followed her and was climbing on the other side. It reached out its hand, but she bluntly refused, and, bitterly rejected, it immediately grabbed her and pulled her into the darkness. Although she broke its arm, she was still strangled by its other hand. She tried to remove its bronze mask, scratched its face. In the last minute, she shot a flare into its eye sockets and pushed it down into the abyss. After killing it, she clung to the cliff face and climbed up. Meanwhile, Stephen was excited because this was his first time entering a pharaoh's tomb. Stephen had found Emperor Alexander's coffin. This emperor is the last avatar of the goddess Ammit. At this time, Lila saw that Arthur's strongest attack was psychological. Arthur used false information, claiming Marc killed her father, to drive a wedge between them. Although Lila tried not to believe, Arthur's words made her waver. Arthur's tactics somewhat worked. At this point, Stephen opened the coffin, deducing that Alexander was the voice of the goddess Ammit. He pulled out Alexander's mask, rummaging inside the sarcophagus. After a while of groping, he reached into the throat
of Alexander and pulled out the statue of the goddess Ammit. Lila, infected with doubt, had a cold expression. Even as Stephen innocently showed off the statue, when he met Lila, she was cold as iron and shouted for Marc. Seems like this is a family matter, so Stephen yielded to Marc to solve it himself. Marc explained that Lila knew he had killed her father. Although he did not mean to kill him, he indirectly led his mercenary team there. That mission, that time? Lila asked. Marc answered, giving Arthur's troops enough time to arrive with guns. Marc grabbed the golden axe of Alexander the Great. Lila ran back down the passage and hid. He swung and slashed a henchman, threw the axe into another, but Arthur pulled a gun and shot him in the chest, sending him falling into the pit. His face turned pale, the blood began to flow, and he fell into darkness. The director said this movie must let Marc fall into the world of consciousness before death. Suddenly, Marc woke up in a mental hospital. He and his mother were both mental patients here. He kept drawing pictures of Stephen and remembered that Arthur shot him. In his hand, he held a moonlight sign and was more surprised to see Arthur as his doctor. Arthur asked questions, trying to make him believe he was a psychiatric patient who liked to watch Egyptian adventure movies. But the surrounding images kept showing all the events that had happened before. Frightened, he ran out of the room. 2 orderlies chased him, but he shook them off. He ran into a room and locked the door. Here he saw a coffin. Inside, someone is calling for help. Why did that voice sound familiar? He opened it. There was Stephen inside. The two met each other and hugged as if they'd never been separated, ignoring the chase. They all remember that Arthur shot them in that last moment. So what was everything that happened? The two planned to escape and then met another coffin rattling violently. Boldly guess inside is Jack, the third personality who appeared before. Last time he almost killed people, so we didn't dare let him out. As they approached the door, they met an old lady in ancient garb saying hello. The two shouted in panic. So who had Marc and Stephen met? It was the god Tuweret, depicted as a hippo with the feet of a lion and the back of a crocodile. In ancient Egyptian myths, this is a goddess of childbirth, in charge of protecting children and mothers. Tuweret also purified the dead so they can continue their journey in the afterlife. So Tuweret here may be related to the revival of Marc and Stephen. All images of the mental hospital and everyone who appeared were fragments of memory in Marc's mind. Marc and Stephen would have to confront the fear that Marc had always hidden, the misery he didn't want anyone to know. Judging by the conversation with Dr. Arthur, perhaps this was a construct by Tuweret to help Marc face the past. Because of these sad memories and life's dark aspects, Marc created Stephen as a haven. When Arthur asked about a baby, Marc couldn't stay calm. He grabbed a pointed object from the table and attacked, but was immediately injected with a sedative. Marc came to meet Tuweret. Tuweret's voice sounded cute, and she was equally lovely. Tuweret confirmed that the two of them were dead. She showed tarot cards depicting their journey. The place they are standing is Duat. Souls here can shape this place. But here it is a psychiatric institute because Marc believes himself and Stephen are crazy for seeing a giant bird.
Marc still didn't believe Taweret's words were true, but he panicked immediately after she opened her wings. The two are on a ship to the field of reeds. If the scales of justice balance their hearts against the feather of truth, they will reach paradise. If not, they must leave the ship and their souls will wander forever in this desert. After saying that, she placed the two hearts on the scales, but it didn't stop. The two hearts are incomplete. They still have hidden things. They need to be honest with each other. The ship contains all the memories of the two. They need to understand each other. Otherwise, their souls will be destroyed. Back in the hospital, Marc immediately suggested killing Taweret and stealing the ship. But Stephen calmed him and tried to find out everything. Each room contains a piece of memory, but Marc didn't want Stephen to know his dark past. Stephen heard a baby screams. He immediately chased. He foolishly went into the room showing that Marc had killed people. No wonder Marc was a mercenary and Khonshu's avatar. But the people Marc killed were all wicked. Marc was haunted, but he overcame it strongly, and he did not expect anyone to understand him. Marc's truth slowed the ship's petrification slightly. It seemed the two were opening up more. But then Stephen saw a child. It ran away. Stephen couldn't accept Marc killing people, especially with a child involved, and decided to find the truth. Marc tried to stop, but failed. The child ran into a room and locked the door. Stephen saw a scene from Marc as a child. Marc used to have a younger brother, a family of 4 people living happily. The younger brother was drawing a fish. Do you remember the fish in episode 1 that Stephen raised? Seems it's the fish Marc bought Stephen. Young Marc was eating, but invited his brother to the cave to play. His mother told Marc to look out for his younger brother. The two ran off. Stephen followed and stepped on a bird skeleton. What's the point? It started to rain, but Marc still insisted on going to the cave. The younger brother accidentally drowned.
And the tragedy began. Marc's mother blamed Marc and abused him brutally. While running through memories, Marc went to a room. That is his brother's funeral. Stephen also came here. Marc's mother looked at him with hatred. All is your fault. Mom's words deeply hurt young Marc, leaving a big scar. He was just a child. He made no mistake. Stephen followed young Marc upstairs. There, he witnessed his mother ignoring his father to celebrate his birthday. The atmosphere was stifling and stressful. The wounds deepened day by day on the child. Poor Marc. Marc's eyes now were sad. Is this too cruel for you? Stephen continued upstairs. He saw a scene from Marc's birthday. His mother held a glass of wine and continued to blame him for his younger brother. You killed him. That made Marc unable to stand it anymore. He ran up to his room. Stephen followed. He tried to enter the room, but Stephen was pulled out by Marc. Stephen didn't understand why Marc remembered his mother with such images. Perhaps in Stephen's mind, his mother wasn't like that. The two saw Marc leaving home. Dad tried to stop him. Marc jumped Stephen to another memory, his father spreading tarot cards. Marc tried to help him, but his father was killed by his mercenary teammates. The two of them entered a tomb. There, Khonshu chose him as an avatar. Do you want to protect the innocent and punish those who harmed them? He accepted Khonshu's request. And that is the origin of Sergeant Moon Knight. Marc let Khonshu use him partly because he also wanted to live with his true nature as a killer. These facts made the scales more balanced, but it still wasn't steady. Suddenly, outside, the souls of the judged screamed. Arthur has successfully awakened the goddess Amit. The two tried to ask Taweret to go back to save the world, but Taweret said they can only return to their bodies. They had to ask Taweret to get Lila to free Khonshu. Thanks to that, we can be revived. Persuaded, Taweret turned the ship towards Osiris's gate, despite the rules. Both of them quickly left the scales. If not, their souls would be destroyed before returning to the gate. Stephen insisted on seeing the memory that Marc always hid. Marc did not want to return there. He struggled, causing them to return to Dr. Arthur. The doctor helped Marc calm down, explaining that Marc created Stephen to hide the bad thing. Or Stephen created Marc to punish the world for what his mother did to him. Following this advice, Marc opened the door to Stephen. That room appeared. Young Marc was inside. Marc was very afraid, his face showing terror. No, that's not my mother. The sound of the door being pounded and scolding grew louder. The door opened and his mother entered, belt in hand. Those memories shaped Marc's personality.
and Marc only created Steven based on a cartoon character as an escape from this truth. How strong Marc was, he didn't want to remember his mother always hitting him, hating him, making his life hell. Instead, Steven would always remember his mother as a beautiful person who always loved him. And when Marc said that his mother had died, Steven could not believe it and returned to Dr. Arthur. Here, the doctor proves that his mother is really dead. Steven was grief-stricken. He returned to his mother's memory. He saw Marc then standing next to the door, but not entering. What greater pain is there than that? Marc suffered greatly, going crazy, just uttering "I'm sorry" to his mother. It's the gradual collapse of a child. Just an unwanted mistake became a tragedy. Marc couldn't bear it. From then on, Steven was his last refuge. Steven always thinks his mother is still alive, always calls his mother every day. Marc sees Steven as a rose-tinted lens to see this world less harshly. Marc sees Steven as his deceased brother. Remember the fish Marc bought for Steven in episode 1? The letters from Mother to Steven were actually from Marc. Marc always protects Steven from the dark reality of life. Creating Steven as a repository of beautiful memories was the only thing he could do for his brother. Suddenly, the ground shook. The two of them returned to the ship. The scales were never balanced. Taweret could not stop fate. The souls of the wicked will drag us both down now. Marc told Steven to escape, leaving him behind. But Marc was grabbed. Preparing to be pulled down, Steven steered the ship. Marc took a painful hit. Steven saw the ship was unstable and rushed over, holding the pole to strike the creatures, melting them into smoke. Marc was pulled towards the land of the dead. Steven rushed to save him and unfortunately fell into the desert. Marc tried to steer the ship, but he couldn't save Steven. He gradually turned to stone in the middle of the desert. He will be kept in this place forever. Suddenly, the scale stopped. It balanced. Marc entered the field of reeds. Back in the real world, Marc lay dead on the ground and was pulled up by Arthur's men. After he got the statue of Amit, he put the scarab on it and left. Standing before the henchmen, Arthur had transformed into a crocodile form. Lila was hiding nearby. As soon as she saw Arthur and his subordinates leave, she walked out to Marc. Seeing her loved one killed like that, anyone would be filled with hate. Lila cried in suffering. Wiping her tears, she picked up the scarab and determined to get revenge on Arthur. At this time, Arthur's men were traveling the main road, but they were surrounded by Egyptian army personnel. Arthur, feeling disliked, said, "I liked it better when you feared me," and planted his staff on the ground. The soul of all the soldiers was ripped from their body.
Except for one spared man, who was then recruited. From behind, Lila blended into the crowd and pulled out a knife to assassinate Arthur. Taweret entered the body of a dead soldier to stop her. Arthur was too strong, she could not stop him. Khonshu's help was needed, and Marc needed Khonshu to regain his strength. Taweret instructed Lila to break the statue imprisoning Khonshu in the God's Chamber, so Lila listened and continued infiltrating Arthur. With the power from the staff, Arthur opened the God's Chamber. While the statues argued, the gate was broken. The 5 guardian gods gathered, but they were judges, not warriors, so Arthur easily defeated them. Holding the statue of Amit in his hand, Arthur smashed it to the ground and liberated her. The powerful crocodile goddess has risen. She said that Arthur's own balance was also imbalanced. But he knew what he did was to achieve Amit's wish and accepted her penalty. The crocodile goddess did not think so. She wanted a person like him as her avatar, because he imprisoned her for 2,000 years. No one else has such balance. With such a proposal, Arthur decided to become her avatar. On the other hand, during the chaos, Lila entered the statue chamber and struggled to find the statue of Khonshu. Placing the statue on the ground, she smashed it and liberated Khonshu. As soon as he appeared, he sensed Marc was no longer in this world. He offered Lila to be his avatar. Even if the brothers offered their sister to the slaughter line, Lila bluntly rejected Khonshu harshly, because she knew submitting to him brought no good. She stood in his way to stop Amit. In the field of reeds, Marc felt the peace of this place with Taweret. But Marc still could not let go of Steven. Taweret tried to stop him, because once he stepped out, he could not come back. Marc stubbornly returned to the desert to find Steven. Marc reached his friend, sharing his thoughts from the bottom of his heart. Steven is always the motivation for him to live. Steven is his superpower. He always loves life and accepts a tragic life. At this time, Marc also began to petrify. He promptly placed his heart on Steven's hand.
Suddenly, the field of reeds opened, his heart lit up, and the two of them were freed from petrification. It seems that this is the time when the hearts of the two are really perfect. The two happily rushed to hug each other. But the sandstorm of the god Osiris came. Fortunately, Taweret appeared in time to save the two of them. Truly a lovely goddess. The two of them quickly ran straight towards the gate to revive. On the other hand, Khonshu is criticizing Amit for using a sinner as a god. But she doesn't care. At all costs, she must achieve her wish, a world with balance. Failing to convince her, the two gods fought. But Khonshu couldn't match Amit. Realizing Marc's soul had returned to his body, Khonshu retreated to revive him. 2 bullets in the chest were pushed away. Moon Knight has returned. Amit was freely awakened. Now Khonshu really needs Marc to channel his strength to stop her. But this time, Steven came out first, demanding Khonshu promise to release them both after this ended. Khonshu had to accept that condition. He summoned the moon to increase the Moon Knight's strength. Marc soared to the sky. On the other hand, Lila freed a god from the chamber. Before he died, he said Amit was bound to a living avatar, so she could be hurt. That can hurt her. Lila called for Taweret and accepted to be her avatar. Hearing the commotion, Arthur immediately used the staff to destroy the chamber. From the rubble, a female knight emerged. She pulled out 2 swords while sprouting golden wings that looked awesome. Arthur now stood at the top of the pyramid and began the judgment. All those who were judged as unbalanced had their souls sucked into Amit's body, making her huge. At this time, Marc also flew to the pyramid. The 2 gods saw each other and clashed. Marc grabbed Arthur and flew into the air. Going very far up, they both crashed down. Despite Arthur being so strong now, he still stood up and tried to finish Marc. At that critical moment, Lila appeared and flew Arthur away. Miss Winged countered Arthur's attack, throwing him aside. Very quickly, Khonshu also appeared and attacked Amit. He swung his staff to knock Amit and briefly gained the advantage. On one side, Khonshu wants to judge the wicked. On the other, Amit wants to judge evil before it happens. But then he was overpowered by Amit. This truly is a battle between Anubis and Amit. On the other side, Lila and Marc combined to defeat Arthur's henchmen. But they were losing to Arthur. He overpowered them both and threw them down. When Arthur's spear was near Lila's neck, Steven showed up and punched him very stylishly. But Arthur grabbed his ankle and threw him away. Steven, switch! Marc took over to attack. 2 against 1 wasn't fair. Arthur, feeling overwhelmed, attacked innocent bystanders instead. Lila was forced to fly to save them. She lifted a bus and broke its door to rescue everyone. Marc alone was not strong enough to beat Arthur. Arthur immediately used a pole to attack Marc. Its terrible power knocked Marc to the ground. Arthur stepped forward, touched Marc's chest, and pulled out his soul. Thought he'd have to die here with Lila? A second later. What's with the lame pants? The person is all over the place. Even Lila did not believe her eyes at what just happened. Arthur was now completely defeated. The 2 of them dragged Arthur to perform the ritual to imprison Amit. A mantra was read. A bright purple ring appeared to seal Amit. The crocodile goddess's form was swept into purple light and then sealed inside Arthur. The imprisoning ceremony ended. Khonshu urged Marc to kill Arthur immediately. But Marc no longer obeyed Khonshu. He forced him to make a contract and release the 2 of them. Khonshu could not do anything but accept Marc's request. The Moon Knight gradually disappeared. Marc returned to his apartment to see Dr. Arthur's reflection. It seems that Marc had truly understood himself and was no longer afraid of him. He said goodbye and woke up in a normal life, like the first episode, still chained to the bedpost and face down on the floor as cracked as ever. After the credits, Arthur is imprisoned in a mental hospital. He was released by a mysterious man. Inside the hospital were the corpses of the doctors. Arthur was put into a limousine to meet with Khonshu. Today, he met his ex-boss, so he dressed quite dashingly. While Arthur was still boasting that Khonshu could not kill him, Khonshu knocked on the partition to introduce a new friend. That is the 3rd personality, Jack Lockley. Jack gently pulled out a gun to shoot Arthur twice, sending him to the afterlife. Khonshu is a genuine boss. Leaving the young Marc and Steven behind, he went into the night with this Jack. In the post-credit scene, the producers revealed the 3rd personality's outfit, promising that Moon Knight will return for a second film or appear in a larger project. The movie ends here. Hello, and see you again in the next videos. Leave your opinion below so I know, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Bye!